So, I'm back finally after having a very long vacation. Hey there guys, Noah here, and welcome back to another Vanguard discussion video. Today, I'll be going over how things went over at Springfest in Georgia. I had a lot of fun. I'm gonna just start by saying that because, oh my god, I met so many people who I've either talked to before in past events or, just, casually hanging out with my friends outside of, my actual teammates for this. I will be going over both V and Premium and then give my thoughts on, how we did overall. Unfortunately, because of how things played out in V, I don't have the actual matchups, so keep that in mind. There were about a handful of matches that I actually remember from that time, but it was still a blast either way. I had a good time, but I'll get into the reasons why I'm actually just mentally exhausted from all this. So let's get into it. So starting off with the list that we took, one of them was piloting Neonectar and the other one was piloting Link Joker. So I'll start with my list first. It is pretty much a run-of-the-mill Raging Form list, but a few minor differences in comparison to what other people are probably using currently. The one Danger Lodge as tack in case, I have to face protect never really came up, mostly because by the time I could use him, I would have to discard him for PG fodder, and it's just, yeah, looking back at it now, it probably wasn't a good idea to run it. Also, I do run 8 crit instead of the 6 draw. I kind of wish I ran 6 draw, just that way I can be more consistent with my pieces. And then the 4 heals, just the regular heals, not the heal guards. I felt like that it was overall better for me to run the regular heals, and a lot of the time it did come up. If I was running the heal guards, there were some turns where it would have killed me way quicker. So up next we've got Neko's list. She was running, of course, Cecilia. Her favorite deck for MV, probably her favorite deck in general, and she put a lot of thought into this. A lot of lists probably wouldn't even consider the Innis at all, but it actually did come up in tournament, because what she would do is, in case she couldn't get the reverse play, she would use the base Cecilia skill to power up the front row, and then do Innis' skill in conjunction to basically give really big, overall big columns in general. There was at one point where she hit over 70k, and I was just sitting there like, sheesh. But yeah, honestly, this is a pretty standardized, list. She built it specifically for, maximizing on the Cecilia play, but, she also had options in case she couldn't do that, and, I think she built this deck to the best of her ability, and I really do think that it was really solid overall. And then, of course, we had Ty, who was playing Link Joker. Starvaders is a specific. I absolutely hated the idea of him running Starvaders in my mind, but then, as we'll go into later on, he actually did pretty well with them. So, as you can see, he's running 4 Nebula Lord, 4 Chaos Breaker, and then the 1 Infinite Zero in case it does come up, which I think it did at one point, but, the rest of the list is pretty self-explanatory. He would never realistically run Colony Maker unless there was no other option, and then he just really needed the Starvader names to make it, to give more search targets for the Craving Claw. So yeah, honestly, pretty standardized list outside of that. But going into this tournament, we knew that we weren't going to be doing well, so mentally we were already prepping for Premium, and we kind of just got, I particularly got clapped. I took 1 game and then went X5 after that. Yikes, yeah, and it's just they had a better record than I did, and I was running the meta deck, so in the back of my mind, I initially was going to run Luard, but I opted not to because I didn't find it as consistent, especially in the advent that I would get starved for Counterblast after a certain point, and it's just feels bad. It was mostly due to my matchups, I feel but even then, a lot of the times I would just brick so fucking hard with this for some odd reason, and I think it's because I'm not running 6 draw. But I think even with the 6 draw, there are quite a few issues with this list that I would have to readjust in case I ever did another V Premium tournament in the future. Probably never with this variant again, because I just don't like Raging Fall Reverse in V. It's awful. You only run it because it's consistent somewhat, not really. really don't have anything else that's like overall splashable. However, Neko went X2 with Cecilia, and honestly, I was really impressed. Like I stated earlier, like she focused her entire game plan around the Cecilia plays, and honestly, the only 2 matches she lost to was against Nubatama. Mostly because they would do the grade 3 that has that really stupid guard restrict, which I'll talk about that card and my overall feelings on it later. But yeah, like she did honestly a lot better than I was ever expecting to, and honestly, if I didn't suck as much, we probably could have just topped. And pretty much the same thing for Ty's list. Ty did relatively well in V. Like, he was very satisfied with this, considering that he kind of just put together this just at random and hoped for the best, I feel like. Don't quote me on that. Like, Ty, if you end up watching this video, just let me know in the comments. And yeah, like, honestly, I was honestly impressed the entire way through. So, oh boy, now we gotta move to premium. So while we did go X3 in V, we were, you know, going to shrug that off and just be ready for premium. So we're going to go over the list now. 2 of the clans remained the same, with Ty and me playing Link Joker and Shadow Paladin respectively. But Neko decides to go Nightmare Dolls for premium. We have been testing this list for a while, and this list is legitimately identical to the previous list that we had back at the last Golden Phoenix Games event, way back in July of last year. She honestly just felt comfortable using it, so I told her, hey, you're kicking my butt with that deck anyway, so it's like, that's totally fine. As for my list, I felt like it was, you know, comfortable for me. I felt like I can do a large majority of my plays consistently up until a certain point, and I realized after the fact that my list, while it can be consistent, hitting the Ritual 10 was honestly the biggest pain in the butt with this in this tournament. I quickly realized it after the fact that it was just it was a combination of my ratios as well as my, you know, my techs in the G zone that may have actually cost me a lot of games in general, but I'd like to think that it was also due to certain matchups that I had throughout the entire tournament. I'll go into more specifics later, but let's just say that this list, while it hasn't changed since TCGCon, I felt confident with this list regardless of the flaws, and I thought I could do well with it. And then we have Ty's list, which we put him on player A on purpose, simply to deal with the meta and the bullshit that was eventually going to come. And honestly, I kind of wish I put him in player B in specific, because of how the matchups were playing out. Like, honestly, yeah, it was just, I wish I could have just put him in player B instead. But, you know, hindsight is 2020, but we move on. But honestly, his list is very similar to the one that took, you know, first place, with a few adjustments either to make up for, he's running the 2 carbons, he's running, you know, for the consistent, you know, like move to Soul and grab a Starvator, it works. Instead of most Link Joker lists that focus exclusively on blocking, he wants to capitalize on overall board presence and just beat you down senselessly, while simultaneously having it out towards certain bullshit matchups like Nightmare Doll as well as Order Colony, with thanks to cards like Freeze Ray. So honestly, he felt very confident going into this, and yeah, it's no wonder why. He really took a lot of, you know, he put a lot of thought into it, and it honestly, I feel like this list is really good. So going into round 1, we had Neko go up against Blaster Rush with her Nightmare Doll, and the only reason why she won was that she kept on drawing into her PGs, and so when Messianic Lord Blaster swung in with its 6 crit and bajillion power, she just had a PG, and he wouldn't even attempt to keep hitting her Vanguard or even her rears at any point, and so she was able to take that W relatively comfortably. As for myself, I played up against Overlord and won simply due to the very nature of the fact that he ran English, motherfucker, do you speak it? That he rode Overlord the end, and as a result, I was able to punish and capitalize on it very quickly with Morfessa and take the first win. And then Chaos versus Nightmare Doll. And really the biggest thing with this was that he allowed, by this point, he already knew that, hey, we already won. But the other thing was, too, is that he allowed her to take a play back, and it cost him the game. Yeah, I would have done it. It would have been a quick reminder, like, hey, you were at an official event, you know, you can't do takebacks in a tournament like this. So going on to round 2, we were actually up against Team Kingslayer, one of the teams of Kingslayer cards, Richard's team. So Neko had to go up against Richard himself, who was playing Narukami, and she won basically because of the Grade 2 game. You know, Grade 2 gamed it, and then eventually went Carol and just went Unga Bunga with the Carol turn, and honestly, it was just disgusting what she was able to do to him. I went up against Chaos and just got absolutely destroyed because every time he would use Zirconium, he went,
"It's shit on your ass! 1v1 me, you pussy!"
Call the top card, and then that top card would just so happen to be one of my Aceroses, and I'm just sitting there in a corner just crying. So unfortunately I did take that loss. I felt like if I just had a little more defensive hand, I could have done something against the Chaos player, but, you know, it is what it is at the end of the day. And then Chaos versus Jewel Knights.
Easy money!
Yeah, that should be self-explanatory. So round 3 comes up, and Neko has to face off against Chaos. What hurt her in the long run was that she thought she had the win by dusting, but the problem is that her opponent was at 2 damage, and eventually he pulled into 2 defensives, shutting down her entire turn. And while she could have played V and probably killed him on the following turn, he checked offensive overtrigger during his own push turn, which cost her the game. So, yeah, I don't know. Overtriggers are good, but, like, I'm still on the fence about that because of situations like that. I had to face up against Nightmare Dolls, and then I just, because I knew I couldn't Grade 2 game them, and because I was stuck on a vanilla on turn 3, yeah, it was just feels bad, especially when if I had even one defensive, I could have lasted through the turn and then punished him with Morfessa, but I didn't hit a single defensive at all, and it was just feels bad, so, you know, it is what it is. And then Chaos versus Overlord, he won. I don't know the specifics on the match, but he won either way. So round 4 comes up, and we had Nightmare Dolls against Grand Blue. I'll go into that in a moment. I went up against Savas and just got absolutely bodied because even though I was able to survive through his first Gem Bolt turn, it didn't really matter because he had like a 16 card hand, and even with Morfessa, I didn't hit enough stand triggers to a point where it was threatening. And even then, he did tell me after the match that he would have had enough even if I hit the double stand. So, you know, at that point, not much I could have done differently. He out aggroed me. He went first. He did his ride down play, and I just didn't have the means to actually beat him. And then Ty ended up winning against Tachi, so good on him. But honestly, the Nightmare Doll versus Grand Blue matchup was absolutely freaking insane. Towards the end of the match, she had to sit there and commit to the Carol turn using Beatrice, and it was really close because he hit defensive, I believe, 2 times, and then because she checked OT on the first set of drive checks, she was just barely enough to actually pressure him for game. And honestly, like, if it wasn't for the OT, I think she would have lost that match. So round 5 comes up, and this time we're gonna just get absolutely dicked on. Like, Neko went up against Regalia, and I honestly gave her really bad advice about this because I completely forgot they had a stride that could superior stride on swing. It was just like, ugh. If I had remembered that, and I told her, hey, don't play Grade 2 game against this because they could just superior stride on you, you know, she would have played a lot better and we wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. Not that it mattered because both me and Ty got absolutely, like, curve stopped. Like, for context, he went up against Aquaforce, but he's not really familiar with the Aquaforce matchup, and so it was just rough after a certain point. Presumably because he kept on putting, the Aquaforce player probably put in the Coral Assaults in after the turn ended to keep drawing a bunch, and probably didn't give him much of a board to actually lock with, so Chaos Breaker was kind of just ineffective after a certain point. But then I went up against Shiran Nui, And what I really hate about that grade 3, everything I hate about that specific combo with the grade 3 combined with Rene is the main reason why I want this card banned. Like, honestly, ban this grade 3 that gives guard restrict in such a way that is just so punishing, especially if you have a low hand, like I ended up having, because I committed so much on my turn. And then for me to not even have enough just to defend because, oh, I can't guard. You're going to force me to dominate these units, and then you're just going to, you know, kick my teeth in even further. Like, I didn't have an out toward a lot of these plays, and it's just, it feels bad, honestly. Then Route 6 happened. Neko went up against Big Belly and lost because there wasn't a whole lot that she could have done differently. I went up against Order Colony, and because I thought I had an understanding of how to deal with it, you know, just, it was a bad matchup overall, so I ended up losing. But he finally got his win against Nightmare Dolls. You know, Chaos, you know, just being able to lock stuff just helps. But we ended up going X3 for both V as well as Premium. Honestly, I learned a lot from this tournament, but at the same time, it still feels bad because I dropped the ball hard. Like, both events, I went X5, so I'm going to have to do a lot of playtesting from this point forward and just figure out what will work best, especially with the new Premium Collection stuff coming right around the corner. It's going to be rough. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought about, you know, Spring Fest, if you actually went to one in the comments section. I'd like to read some of your stories if you have any. And until next time, guys, this is DRAGNOA, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.